The myth of the Jewish Jesus. Around the 6th-5th century BC, the term Judean way of life appears in the Bible. This term does not denote a religion in the modern sense, like Judaism, but rather a set of tribal customs and covenantal practices designed to preserve the lineage and uphold the covenant with Yahweh. These practices structured daily life, ritual observance, and communal identity among the people of Judah, blending social, cultural, and religious elements into a cohesive framework. Judean way of life at this time is not synonymous with the modern concept of Jewish. The term Judean predates the modern word Jew, and those living in Judea did not conceive of themselves as representing all of Israel. While they were part of the broader Israelite heritage, first-century Judeans understood themselves as a regional group associated with the southern kingdom and its traditions, rather than the entirety of Israel or its 12 tribes. Modern notions of Jewish ethnic identity, which assume some kind of mythical continuity with historic biblical Israel, are therefore anachronistic when applied to this period. A biblical Judean would not have understood what Judaism was or what Jewish people meant. Jesus spent most of his life in Nazareth and Galilee. Among other Israelites, he would have been identified as a Galilean and a Nazarene, reflecting his local upbringing and residence. Jesus did not live in Judea. From the perspective of Romans or Greeks, however, he might have been perceived as a Judean, since external observers often labeled people by broader provincial affiliation rather than by local distinctions. So while Pontius Pilate may have called Jesus King the Judeans, Israelites would have called him a Galilean or a Nazarene. This demonstrates that regional identity was context-dependent, with local and external labels differing significantly. Among those in biblical Judea, Jesus was a Galilean, not a modern Jew, nor even a contemporary Judean. So from the perspective of Jesus' peers, not only was he not Jewish in the modern sense, he wasn't even a Judean in the first-century sense. Applying the modern concept of Jew retroactively to first-century contexts creates a historical anachronism. Contemporary Judeans would not have considered Jesus a Judean in the sense of representing all Israel, nor would they have used a term equivalent to Jew as it is understood today. Similarly, claims that Jesus was Jewish or a Jew, or that modern Jews are direct representatives of all biblical Israel, would have made no sense in first-century Judea or at any point in the biblical timeline. In conclusion, the notion of a Jewish Jesus is an historical anachronism. It projects modern ethnic and religious categories backward onto a period when identity was defined regionally, tribally, and through covenantal practices, rather than through the universalized modern concept of Jewishness. Those living in first-century Judea, or any Israelite within the biblical timeline, would not have understood Jesus or themselves in these modern terms. Furthermore, Judaism, as a formalized religion, did not exist during the timeline of the Bible. The structured religious system recognized today as Judaism, often referred to as Rabbinic Judaism, began to take shape after the destruction of the Temple in 70 CE. The use of the word Jewish to describe a biblical Judean is therefore a retrospective application of a term and concept that would have been completely foreign to ancient Israelites. Applying it to biblical figures like Jesus imposes a later religious framework onto a historical context where it did not yet exist.